We are slaying monsters.
Don't let the ghosts and the ghouls disturb you, darling.
Suck my Dybbuk.
Yeah, got that big Dybbuk energy.
Big Dybbuk energy.
Oh, here they come.
Yeah, for real.
What, are we gonna start it with Dybbuk jokes?
I guess we can.
I don't know. The one thing that always strikes me is that whenever you're dealing with demons, they always have like there's always Bale, right?
Yeah.
Or you know, Belial or Bathsheba. Also probably non-B ones, but those are the other ones that come
There's
into my mind.
Mephistopheles.
Oh yeah.
Am I saying that right?
Mephistopheles, yeah. Dagon, of course.
Okay, yes.
But there's never, demons are never like Greg.
No.
Right? There's never Randy.
Marty. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm Randy the demon. I'm one of the lesser demons.
See, if we wanted to prove that demons were bullshit and not real, that's proof, because there would be all kinds of demons coming out of the woodwork if it was a real thing. And like Zak Bagans would be doing his thing and they'd be like, "Who are you, demon?" And he'd be like, "Randy." Like, oh.
Right. Yeah.
Like it's never anything like,
"Oh, I'm Doug."
Doug.
Yeah, I'm Doug. Hey.
Doug the demon.
How y'all doing? This is Doug Demon.
Yep.
Yeah, we're just we're going have a little possession going on right now.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll thank you not to use my name in vain. Yeah, I'm gonna take offense at the Trinity right now.
You get ready. It's coming.
Yeah, they're always it's these odd names, right? You know, it's really, really cool. But that's because they come from the old texts like that.
But Dybbuk is not a demon.
A Dybbuk.
It's a thing.
It's a class. It's like a classification.
Okay.
A Dybbuk is like a cat. If you're talking about animals, right? So we have our cats, Yotes and Zuri. So those are their names. That would be like Mephistopheles or Bathsheba or something like that, right? And then they would be cats, so they would be Dybbuks. That's the classification of demon. There were some people back throughout history got really, really involved during I think it was the scientific revolution. I think it was when they started classifying everything. People, some religious scholars were like, "Oh, we should do the same thing with holy texts." And so they started classifying everything in the holy texts as well. And we're like, okay, so this is where you get like, okay, so there are seraphim, there are Nephilim, there are like all these different classifications of angels, but then there's also different classification of demons, and there's these, and they do the different things all throughout all throughout the realm of hell. Right?
Okay.
So there was this classification. I want to say it was around the same time that we were doing like the scientific classification, kingdom, phylum, species, genus, like all of that stuff. As we were breaking that down, the religious scholars were like, we should do the same thing for religious stuff. Unfortunately, none of that was real.
But I'm sure that it made it seem more legitimate.
Oh, I'm sure it did.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they were trying to make it that way and make it be like, oh no, you can go deep into it and really unravel like where they all come from and how they relate to each other and all of this stuff.
There is something about the appeal of like classification and complication of things that are very not complicated that bring legitimacy to something that is otherwise illegitimate.
Oh, absolutely.
There's definitely something in that, I think.
Yeah. I mean, that's sort of, and you know, ghost hunting is that way too.
Oh my God.
Where you're like,
yes.
you roll up to a place and you're like, okay, specifically, no, I think this house has a poltergeist. And if there's a poltergeist, and there's all of these little different check boxes that we have. So this is, you know, a psychical manifestation, or this is an unhappy spirit that's throwing things around or something like that. But then that's different if you're like, no, this person's demon possessed. If they're demon possessed, then we have a whole other set of situations and scenarios that are associated with that. And so
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Or there's like residual energy, not a ghost. It's residual.
Oh, yeah,
There's
your
like,
stone tape theory.
Yeah,
like,
you're
oh no,
always-
these are just the echoes of people who have died here. These are not like active intelligent spirits, maybe.
Right.
There again, it's all bullshit.
Right.
But
man, does it sound authoritative?
Makes you
when
sound like
can-
you really know what you're doing. You're like, I've experienced all of this. Look at how smart I am when it comes to the classification of ghosts.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, like, why are we even talking about this?
And who are we?
And who the hell are we? Oh my god. Who are you? Well, we got Matt across the table.
Yo.
And I'm EJ, and we are slaying monsters.
Damn
and
right.
Today, we are going to talk about big Dybbuk energy.
Yeah, you get some big Dybbuk energy.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll make a lot of Dybbuk jokes throughout the course of this episode, because today we are going to talk about the Dybbuk box.
Yay!
This is cool. I've been really excited about jumping into this for a long time. I feel like this is a perfect Slaying Monster series because we're going to get a lot of history. We're going to get a lot of like the intrigue behind a lot of historical events that happened. And then we're also going to get just wild ass paranormal phenomena. It's going to be super awesome.
Yeah.
Really, really cool. And we're going to wrap it in with a couple great charlatans. And we're just going to tell a wonderful, wonderful story throughout the course of it, I think.
I mean, what's an episode of ours without the little charlatans sprinkled in there?
Damn right. Damn right. So, what is the Dybbuk box? EJ, do you know what a Dybbuk box is?
Do you really want me to answer truthfully? Because I will, and I will ruin the whole thing.
Okay. Well, all right then. All right. Well, we'll see. I'll take you through it, and we'll see how much of your knowledge is accurate. How about that?
Oh, yes, that sounds great.
Well, first you cut a hole in a box, and then you put your Dybbuk in the box.
And then you ring the doorbell and say, pizza delivery.
So the Haunted Museum in Las Vegas contains a particularly spooky item. A wine box, originally owned by a concentration camp survivor and cursed with the malicious spirit of a dead man or a demon. Even touching the box can bring months of bad luck, and anyone who owns the box is taking their very life in their hands. Among those negatively affected by the box are famed paranormal investigator Zak Bagans, musical artist Post Malone, and even the cast and crew of the Sam Raimi produced film The Possession. The history, truth, and copious lies surrounding the Dybbuk box is a fascinating look at mythology, folklore, and propaganda, and will be our topic for this series. My primary sources for this series will be Jason Haxon's book, The Dybbuk Box. I'll also be using Kenny Biddle's article, The Dybbuk Box, in the Skeptical Inquirer, and Charles Moss's article on Input Magazine titled, Finally, the Truth Behind the Haunted Dybbuk Box Can Be Revealed. Also, to be clear from our very first step, most of the following account regarding the mystical Dybbuk box is made up for reasons that will become clear later on. Okay.
Usually it has to do with money.
It's funny. So I'll agree with you. Like most of the time it has to do with money. I don't think the origins of the Dybbuk box myth have much to do with money, honestly.
You know what? I
It's
agree with you on that, actually. I do.
And it sort of depends because, as we'll talk about, the Dybbuk box doesn't just have one particular origin when it comes to a person. When we compare it to, say, the Minnesota Iceman, maybe, who Frank Hansen made this artifact and ran around claiming that it was a Sasquatch that he got through some means. The whole story comes from Frank Hansen. The Dybbuk box has a particular origin with one person, and then another person really builds that story as we go. And so it's really fascinating because it's a collective story more so than the Minnesota Iceman or the Aztec saucer crash or something like that, which is more of a single note type of one particular legend, one story coming from one source. Makes sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Okay. To start this very strange tale, we are going to have to travel all the way back to 1400. The Jews have made their way to Spain, where they are living under the rule of King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella. These two, of course, are focused on the Caribbean and the New World at this point. They're ultimately going to end up sending Columbus there, right? To take and hold lands halfway around the world, they're going to need a couple of things, though. They need bodies, they need resources, and most importantly, what do you use to hold and secure land, DJ?
Guns?
Weapons. Absolutely. Yeah. So at this time, the Jews, they had a very elaborate network of trade routes that had essentially been running since about the 8th century. And they were able to raise not only money, but valuable resources for the crown and their conquest, like these weapons that they were desiring. And as such, they have kind of a tenuous relationship that is flourishing between Catholic nobility and the Jewish merchants. And this sort of shared interest is burgeoning at the beginning of the Middle Ages. Now, it helped because some of the Jews had converted to Christianity. But Ferdinand and Isabella, spurred on by their less accepting Catholic contemporaries, they were starting to grow suspicious of that conversion and whether it was truthful or whether it was just to continue to gain the business and the trust. And by about 1487, they established the Spanish Inquisition, which no one expected.
Right. Nobody expects it. Yeah, I mean, my only, it's funny because my only, like, knowledge about it really is the movie The Fountain. Darren Aronofsky.
Oh, yeah! I forgot about that movie.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
That movie is so good.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, was it Isabella in it? Didn't Rachel Weisz play Isabella
anymore,
or something?
Maybe. It was a long time ago.
But man.
It was a long time ago and it was so weird.
It was such a weird movie. But that's what I think about. When I think about the Spanish Inquisition, I think about that movie.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
Yeah, the conquistadors.
Yeah.
Exactly, yep. Now, the formation of the Spanish Inquisition occurred immediately following Spain's conquest in Granada, which was a war that was at least partially funded by the network of Jewish merchants. I suspect that the old head Christians, fueled by some good old-fashioned anti-Semitism, were worried about the Jews gaining too much power and influence.
Oh, they were totally jealous.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, you know, if they start helping you win wars, they may start asking for, like, favors in return. And then all of a sudden they have some power over you because they're helping you. They have all these trade routes set up that they can just cut off at any time.
See, this is the thing that's, like, really messed up to me, is that, like, if it wasn't for them, there would be no conquest.
Exactly.
And,
yeah.
you know, it's the way that they just completely turn their backs on them under the guise of a religious reason.
Yes.
If you're being totally honest, I mean, yes, I think they absolutely were anti-Semites, but at the same time, I also think that that was a convenient reason for them to get rid of powerful group of people that was not them.
I think that when you look at events like this throughout history, and believe me, we're going to talk about World War II as well, but I think whenever you talk about this, most of the time, religion or racism does tend to take a back seat to unseating people from power.
Yeah.
And it forms a very nice scapegoat.
Yeah.
Where the powerful people can be like, no, let's keep those people down. And you can goad your followers into going along with you by using racism or anti-Semitism or,
oh my God.
you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, just look at what happened in Tulsa. It's like,
totally.
You know, you see people that are getting more powerful, more successful, living their lives.
Yep.
And that's such a threatening thing. And it's like, it's everywhere. It's all throughout history. It's so fucked up.
Yes.
And not to say that those people, I mean, yeah, you're racist. Yeah, you're an anti-Semite. You're not going to just say, oh, I'm jealous of your success.
No, you can't do that. Right?
You can't say that.
Well, and certainly if you
I
are...
don't know why you can't say that.
If you are the nobility in Spain at the time, you're never going to be like, oh my God, I'm afraid that these people who are selling me goods are going to become so powerful that I won't be able to do anything against them. You never want to say that because it makes you look weak.
Instead, you vilify them.
Exactly. Yeah.
However you can.
And you say, oh, they're not really Christian. They're just pretending to be Christian.
Right.
And so what happens is you form, say, a Spanish Inquisition, right? And you go on a goddamn witch hunt, attempting to locate the heretics. And that's exactly what they did. They were trying to find heretics in the converted Jewish and Muslim communities. See, the fear was that the Jews and the Muslims were fake converting to Christianity, and then they were posing as fake Christians and using their influence to convert these poor, innocent-minded Christians to give up their religion and become Jewish or Muslim instead. So they were like infiltrating into the good Christian communities.
Yeah.
The Inquisition's original purpose was to find these offenders and bring them to trial. Remarkably, though, once you start a witch hunt, it tends to get out of hand. And by 1492, the Inquisitors, they weren't just looking for ex-Jews, they were looking for all the Jews. So if you were found even just practicing Judaism, you were given a choice. You could either convert to Christianity or you could be deported. And all of a sudden, they were trying to just stamp out Judaism in their land altogether.
And also Muslims, apparently.
And yes, and anyone practicing anything other than Christianity, basically.
Right. Yeah.
No, it didn't matter what the religion was. They were doing exactly the same thing for the Muslims.
Yeah.
We don't really know how many Jews and Muslims were forcefully removed from Spain. Some estimates put it to be around as many as 800,000 Jews, but the taxation records put the number closer to 80,000, plus about 200,000 conversos, or Jews who had converted to Christianity. Either way, there was a mass exodus of Jews from Spain in the early 16th century. And realize, this wasn't a thing that Spain did on its own. See, at the time, Catholicism was on the rise in Europe, and Judaism was being outlawed in other countries too, like Britain and Italy. So basically, anywhere the Pope had influence, they were exiling Jews. And Muslims and,
anybody who wasn't Catholic.
Right, and they were also trying to stamp out the Druids. They were, like all of that,
and
too.
God forbid you're an atheist.
Yeah. And I will say we're focusing very heavily on the Jews, and that's because the Dybbuk box is a wholly inherently Jewish artifact. So I just want to acknowledge that, it wasn't exclusive to the Jews at this time.
Right.
They were anybody who wasn't Christian, they were like, you get the hell out of here.
Right.
Or I guess not hell, you get the heaven out of here.
I guess whatever they would say. but that's our focus.
That's our focus, yeah. So what you end up with is you have a bunch of these newly exiled Jews, and the Jewish people who were once this major contributing force to Europe's infrastructure were suddenly locked out of countries that they used to supply. And this obviously frustrated a lot of people who had watched their businesses dry up overnight. And so they began searching for meaning in their anger and their pain. And some of them turned to the Kabbalah. See, some of the Jewish scholars at the time believed that there were these hidden messages in the Torah, their religious book. Not like coded messages, like not secret cipher things, but clues to discovering divine secrets and to help you bring like a greater understanding to the mystical world around you. So it's a form of esotericism, I guess.
Yeah.
Magical rituals we're talking about, stories of angels and demons, rules for achieving enlightenment through your life. These are the kinds of things that Kabbalah scholars could find hidden in the margins of the Torah, or, in the meanings between the passages.
I remember reading about ancient Judaism and ancient Christianity and how it was almost like a cult. Like how these people, it was very esoteric. Its roots were esoteric. Like all of them were. They were like, the Jews were just like this cult, and they were just, everything morphs, everything changes. And I think it's really cool to read about how the Kabbalah was almost like, intentional or not, a bit of a return to that ancient world esotericism.
Oh, yes. Absolutely. Yeah. There's to bring in the mysticism again.
Yeah.
And be like, the world doesn't need to be in this very orderly structural thing. There's this secret hidden world beyond, and there's all these secret elements to it that you can unlock if you gain the right amount of knowledge. And look, this is something that we still push to this day. I mean, this is Blavatsky,
Yes.
And to a certain extent, this is like Adamski, this is anyone who's teaching any type of esoteric belief structure now. It's the same sort of concept.
Yeah, and it's super old.
Yeah. So the reason that I'm kind of vague about Kabbalah teachings is because there's really no limit to the understanding and interpretation that was derived from these religious texts. Scholars were encouraged to interpret and then reinterpret someone else's interpretation or your own interpretation. And there's many, many different versions of these teachings, and they're all treated as a form of truth. It's more of like a personal journey of understanding and enlightenment, and a question of how you take the lessons from your own religious studies and you apply them to your world, your personal worldview.
It's a very modern take of something.
It absolutely
truly
is. Yeah.
Yeah, and it makes sense to me from a psychological perspective, just because like they came from this very dogmatic place, and they made something their own, and I think that's really amazing. It's kind of like saying "fuck you" to all of the rigidity and dogmatism that they ran from. They could kind of make their own religion into something very interesting and different.
And I've always really loved the concept of the questioning. I remember I had a really good friend who was raised Jewish who talked to me about this and about how it was such a tenet to question everything.
Yeah.
In opposition to, say, Christianity, which has a greater tendency to just be like, the Bible is the truth. Mm-hmm. Everything that is in this we take as a true handed down word of God. Mm-hmm. Whereas in Judaism, particularly in the Kabbalah teachings and lessons, it's like, think about it though. Does it make sense? Does it make sense to you? Do you understand this from a fundamental level for yourself? Mm-hmm. Just because someone says it, well, maybe you should reinterpret what they think.
Yeah.
It's all about your own personal journey in the Kabbalah, which is really fascinating.
Yeah, and like not believing everything you're told.
Exactly.
Just because you're told it.
The Kabbalah examination, which had previously been restricted among Jewish religious leaders, rose to prominence following the Spanish exile in the early 1500s. So the Jews were very eager to find meaning in this upheaval that had just happened to them. And many of them took comfort in these mystical beliefs and practices. And others began seeking the Messiah, who they thought was yet to come to earth and thought was going to guide them towards salvation and enlightenment. Enter Isaac ben Solomon Luria, rabbi and Jewish mystic. A highly intelligent young man, he was really deep into his study of Jewish religious texts. And although Luria had been born after the exile, his early life was very, very strongly influenced by the exile. When he turned 22, he had become a well-educated scholar. He had exhausted the traditional Judaism texts, and he turned to studying the Zohar, which was a very early Kabbalistic writing. Immediately, he was fascinated by it. He devoured these stories and these interpretations, and he began teaching them to anyone who would listen. He never wrote anything down. He just kind of spoke off the cuff, and he let the messages flow through him. And by the late 1500s, Luria had his own cadre of disciples, and people started questioning, maybe this guy is actually the Messiah that the Torah has been talking about. Now, one of his primary tenets was the concept of Gilgul Neshamat, or reincarnation of the soul. He called this transmigration, and he said souls, they can move from place to place and attach to different people until their tasks are completed. It's essentially like reincarnation. If you weren't able to do everything that you needed to do in your life, you had this second chance after you died to keep going. Death wasn't the end for you. You could, as a wandering soul, attach yourself to somebody else and try to continue your journey until you accomplished your goal.
Man, what happens to the person that has their own goals?
Well, they are the victim of a possession. But can you see how this whole belief is influenced by the exile? You have the Jews, right? Once proud merchants throughout Europe, they find themselves suddenly under the yoke of persecution. They're driven away, stripped of their industry, feeling like untethered souls. But if Gilgul teaching was true, they could move on and they could find home in another body. They could be given a second chance to rebuild what they had lost.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, he was so influenced by the Spanish exile that this was such a great belief, not only for him to understand and to proselytize, but for all of the people that were following him that were like, oh my God, this is exactly what I want out of my life.
Yeah. Man, that's very Eastern without the idea of, it just has a very like Far Eastern idea to me. And it's like
the reincarnation.
Yeah, the whole like second chances thing, and you could do better in the next cycle. And,
right.
You know.
Yeah. But as you mentioned, there's a downside to the soul's migration, because if the soul has unfinished business and is dislocated from its original host through death, it wandered the land looking for another. And these wandering souls might happen upon a person and possess them. Now, if you're lucky, you could be possessed by an Iber, or a benevolent soul. So this is a positive possession where that soul, they need to carry out a very specific task for the good of people before continuing its journey. So that soul is going to do something great for the world, and then it's going to move on.
But you're still in the back. You're still thrown to the back burner there. Like
yeah, sure, right, yeah. You have to put your own personal goals aside for a minute or two. But the thing is, if you were possessed by an Iber, they would accomplish it, and then they would be satisfied, and so they would leave you be. They would be over then.
Still non-consensual possession.
Yeah, this is true.
But okay, fine. I'll give you this. The Iber is good. Quote,
yes,
good.
It's good.
Okay.
But you could also be possessed by a malicious spirit instead, one which only sought to do evil. And that spirit would cling to a person, and that would bring you misfortune and hardship and misery as long as it was attached to you. That spirit was a Dybbuk. Now, Dr. Harry Friedman, one of Britain's foremost Jewish scholars, describes Dybbuks extensively in his book, Kabbalah, Secrecy, Scandal, and the Soul. The word Dybbuk is the Yiddish form of the Hebrew word davik, which means to cling or to cleave. Not to cleave as in cut, but to cleave as in, like, cling to.
Oh, okay.
According to Dr. Friedman's research, Dybbuks came from the other side, or Sitra Ara. He describes this as a domain of evil, a mirror image of our own world where demons run rampant. Kind of remarkably like the Upside Down from Stranger Things. Yeah,
the Upside Down.
yeah, it's like a mirror world where all of the things are still there, like the buildings are still there, but they're like wrong and there are demons all over the place.
Ooh, it's like most of my nightmares.
I guess so.
Anyway, no, absolutely.
Yeah, think Upside Down from Stranger Things. Absolutely, that's what it's like. Now, while angels are monitoring our reality, the demons are controlling their own reality, and anyone who crosses over does so at their own risk. It's unclear. He doesn't write anything in his book about whether you can communicate through Christmas lights. I will say that.
Ah, too bad.
Dybbuks, as is typical with most evil manifestations, were primarily male spirits which possessed women. Sophie Warner, writing in Moment magazine, expands on this, noting that virgin women often became targets on their wedding night. And the Dybbuk would enter the woman through her vagina and take control of her body, making her speak rudely, refuse food, or, let your mind wander, do other things unbecoming of a young wife.
I think she's just realizing how trapped her life is now.
I kind of think so, too.
She's like, I made a huge fucking mistake.
Well, and so this has obvious connotations with early pseudoscience surrounding hysteria. Right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, the idea that women who are misbehaving must be possessed by evil spirits.
And not just people.
Yeah, right. Well, because women want to be placid baby factories.
Oh, definitely.
Is the consensus,
Definitely, yes.
But, so, Dybbuks are an interesting part of this, too, though, because it gave the women a sort of power in their relationships. So, most marriages were arranged, of course, right? Mm-hmm. This meant that these young women had to be subjected to the whim of a man who they hadn't chosen and quite possibly didn't even like very much. Mm-hmm. But if she claimed that she was possessed by a Dybbuk, she made herself unclean in his eyes. And she bought herself time, and she retook some of the power and control in their relationship, at least for a little while.
So she says that she's possessed by the Dybbuk.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you would get your wife back for the wedding night, and then all of a sudden she would be like, I don't want to eat. Or she would be rude, or, whatever.
Okay.
She would refuse your advances.
Okay.
So what do you do if your new wife gets possessed by a Dybbuk on your wedding night?
I think you just got to sit back in your lazy boy and watch your TV and just basically live your life. Like, this is no different from, like, Al Bundy and what happened on, what's that fucking
Married
show?
with Children.
Married with Children. Thank you. Peggy and Al Bundy.
I read a fascinating dissertation on this recently, actually, so the reason that Al Bundy is so pissed off all the time is because his job is terrible and backbreaking, and then he gets home and he has this like hypersexual wife in Peggy, but he's so exhausted that he can't even deal with her, and it makes him miserable. He's not miserable because he hates her. He's miserable because he's too exhausted to appreciate his hypersexual wife.
Oh, I love that.
Isn't that a great theory?
I really like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wasn't he a shoe salesman, though?
Maybe, I don't know.
I think he sold shoes.
We never watched it that much. I feel like it was on a channel I couldn't get easily.
It was on Fox.
Yeah, we only got Fox when we turned the antenna the proper way.
Us too. I could only watch that show at my grandma's house.
Yeah. Oh, I bet your grandmother loved you watching Married with Children.
I don't know why it was okay.
All right, so your wife, she's possessed by a Dybbuk. Got possessed on your wedding night, as so many wives do.
Yeah. I don't want this anymore.
So how do you get the Dybbuk out of her?
This guy sucks.
Yeah. How do you get the Dybbuk out of her? Dude, so the ritual to banish a Dybbuk from this person's vessel is straight out of Supernatural, dude. And we're going to talk about Supernatural quite a bit throughout this series because it ties in multiple times. Okay. So this is taken from Dr. Friedman's article, How to Deal with a Dybbuk in the Jewish Chronicle. Ready?
All right, I'm ready. How to deal with a Dybbuk. Sounds like a musical. Sounds like a musical number.
Okay, so you take the possessed person to a synagogue. In the synagogue, there are 10 men dressed in funerary robes. The exorcist starts to insult the Dybbuk. First, by exposing it as a possessing spirit. He's like, hey, you're possessing this person. And then he calls it out for all of the atrocities it committed during its life. It'd be like, you stole candy when you were 5 years old. You did this, you did that. You awful, awful person.
Okay. How does it know this? How does he know this?
They're probably
Making it up?
They're probably more general than that.
Oh, okay.
Like you were a horrible person. You destroyed lives. You lied all the time. You whatever.
Yeah,
you know,
sure.
all kinds of insults basically. Then the exorcist opens the ark in the synagogue. Do you know anything about synagogues and what the Ark is. That's where the Torah and the scrolls are kept.
I know that you're
in the
not supposed
synagogue.
to look at it unless you want your face melted off.
Yeah, that's Indiana Jones, yes. But so inside the Ark in the synagogue, there are 7 of the most sacred scrolls. And the exorcist takes them and brings them before the possessed person. And 7 of the accompanying members produce ram's horns. And they use the ram's horns as trumpets, and they blow 7 notes on their horns for a total of 49 horn blasts. Meanwhile, 7 black candles are lit and throws the room into this like semi-flickering darkness. And then the exorcist reads from these 7 scrolls, reciting various hymns, chants, and conjurations. Among these is the repeated name of God, which is 42 letters long.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. This is this whole thing. This is what I'm saying, man. This is straight out of Supernatural. Eric Kripke wrote this, you know?
Is this Kabbalah too? Or is
Yeah.
this...
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. Now, the possessing Dybbuk, it's not going to go quietly either. So it's like thrashing around while all this is happening. They try to cling to their host, and so they'll use the host, lashing out with like curses and violence as the ritual crescendos. But if the exorcist shows no fear and prevails, the Dybbuk will be forced to flee the host's body and will exit through their big toe.
Really?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, so it comes out of the big toe. But the ritual isn't over when it comes out of your toe, because now it's unhoused. And now the exorcist has to go even harder and insist you flee this place. Because if they don't do that, the Dybbuk might possess someone else. Remember, they have 10 other hosts in that room right now.
Yeah.
And if that happens, then you have to do the whole thing again with all of the horn blasting and all of the candles and scrolls and shit. Right?
Yeah.
But if the exorcism is successful, the Dybbuk is driven back to the other side, and the possessed person is finally freed of their supernatural controller, and I guess forced to go home to their husband.
You gotta find another Dybbuk.
Yeah, right.
Man.
You arrive home, you're like, oops, possessed by Dybbuk again.
Yeah. Yeah. I was like, okay, now we can have sex. No, sorry.
Yeah, no, another Dybbuk.
Another Dybbuk. Darn it. The luck I have today. Man. I have a question though.
Yeah.
The exorcism here.
Yes.
Is this before Catholic exorcisms?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't know specifically.
Okay. Because now I'm wondering, like, who started it? You know?
Who started the
Who
exorcism?
started the exorcism
Well, let me-
idea?
Okay, hang on. This, you know what? It's probably about the same time, because the first official guidelines for exorcism were established in 1614.
And when was this being done?
About the same time, 1600s, 1700s. So I have an article here from the University of Manchester that they discovered a text of Jewish exorcism that seems to date back 1,000 years.
Oh my God.
And is, interestingly enough, a prayer ritual that a husband or husband-to-be recites to other men gathered in the synagogue. Yeah, so again, it is for your wife. It was very fascinating. Yeah, yeah. So it's possible. Now, I don't know how this factors into, say, Dybbuk exorcism particularly, but it looks like there are fragments of exorcism in the Jewish faith that exist prior to Catholic exorcisms, which kind of makes sense because the Jewish religion is older than Catholicism.
Oh, very much so. That's interesting to me that it maintains that female-based mythology. That it's about the woman being possessed.
What you see that all the time, though. Yeah, it's almost always women being possessed by male spirits. Now, Dr. Friedman points out the obvious correlations between belief in Dybbuks and mental illness. And this is kind of a wriggly can of worms that I imagine we'll talk about in future series as well. But the cross-cultural history of exorcism and correlations between supposed possession and real diagnosable mental illness is a fascinating little corner of paranormal research.
Oh, yeah.
Dr. Friedman says, possession by spirits was a common way of explaining behaviors that could not otherwise be understood. So common that even those who were not mentally ill, but who simply deviated from societal norms, were frequently considered to be possessed.
Wow, that sounds like tale as old as time, really.
Yeah. I mean, it was sort of a catch-all diagnosis for any unexplainable conditions. So schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, even PTSD would be linked to demonic possession. And worse still, exorcisms encouraged and honestly continue to encourage negative responses in individuals with symptoms by reinforcing their behaviors.
Damn, I mean, how much of this have we seen on these ghost shows that we watch?
Yeah. It's funny, I love watching Ghost Adventures. We're going to talk heavily about Ghost Adventures in this, obviously, because Zak Bagans owns the Dybbuk box. But you see them do these ritualistic, anti-possession exorcisms, and you see these people these poor people play into it. And I don't think that they do it consciously. I don't know that I've ever actually seen someone who didn't truly believe that they were possessed by an evil spirit when they were doing an exorcism.
Maybe they just needed somebody to tend to them.
Yeah. Exorcisms to me are very similar to D&D. They are group storytelling that is done through the actions of multiple people in an event. Yeah.
It's like LARPing,
yes,
but like psychological LARPing.
Totally.
When you don't really have the money to get therapy.
Yeah.
Because this country is horribly broken.
Or you straight up don't believe in it. I mean, there's a lot of people that think that therapy is for weak people, weak-minded people. Of course. Like you just tough it out.
Right, tough it out, or you're possessed by a demon.
Or you're possessed by a demon, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know what's funny? So as far back as the 1500s, placebo-controlled trials were invalidating exorcisms.
Really?
So get this. There was a Lancet article published recently, more recently than 1500, obviously, titled Placebo Controls Exorcisms and the Devil, which describes an exorcism by Charles IX, where what he did is he took non-sacramental wine and used that alongside true sacramental wine and holy water. And the afflicted person who had a demon in them, or claimed to have a demon in them, was unable to distinguish the difference between sacramental wine and non-sacramental wine, even though one should have been a placebo that didn't affect them at all.
Wow.
This was also done with holy wafers and supposedly blessed artifacts as well.
The demon should definitely know the difference between that.
Yeah. But
smart man.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah, that's
right?
really cool. Yeah.
But even so, to this day, exorcism processes continue, as does belief in evil spirits. Mm-hmm. So it's no surprise that quote-unquote cursed objects containing demonic spirits sometimes still surface. Mm. And that's exactly what happened on eBay in 2003. The story, according to the Dybbuk Box website, goes like this. Kevin Manis owned a used furniture store in Portland, Oregon. Part of his trade was furniture restoration, so bringing new life into old pieces, which are fallen into disrepair. As such, Manis frequented estate sales and auctions and always kept an eye out for unique pieces that he could refurbish and resell. In September of 2001, Manis found himself at a local estate sale for a recently deceased Jewish woman. Born in Poland, she had emigrated to Spain after World War II before finally making her way to the U.S. She lived to 103 years old.
Whoa.
Which, if you're Manis, you're like, that's really promising. She's got to have something here, right?
A lot of older stuff, yeah.
As he perused the items at her estate sale, he struck up a conversation with the woman's great-granddaughter. She explained that her great-grandmother was named Havila and was a Holocaust survivor who escaped with a group of other Jews during the war. She was the only member of the family that survived. And when she fled to Spain, she got by doing some odd jobs and making what little money she could to afford the trip to America. Maybe she even crossed paths with Bernard Heuvelmans, who was, of course, singing in a cabaret at the time.
He was?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. Yeah, during the war. Mm-hmm.
No way.
Yep. Now, after the war ended, she scraped together what little money she had, and she immigrated to the U.S., taking only a steamer chest, a sewing trunk, and a wine cabinet.
I like her priorities. I like this woman. Also, this little wine closet, whatever you call it, is really, really beautiful.
The wine cabinet?
The wine cabinet. Mm-hmm. It's so cool.
It's gorgeous.
I really want one.
I know, they're really cool.
Yeah.
It's interesting. We'll talk about it a little later, but I believe it's actually a liquor cabinet, not a wine cabinet.
Okay.
Because it's not quite big enough to hold a wine bottle.
Yeah.
It holds like smaller, like a whiskey bottle or something like that. And then the places on the door have positions for highball glasses, not wine glasses.
Okay.
Yeah. So we colloquially will call it a wine cabinet because that's what all the reporting around it calls it, but I think it's actually a liquor cabinet.
Cool.
Either way, the great-granddaughter at this estate sale showed Kevin Mannis the wine cabinet, and it was for sale. And so it's modest. It's just big enough to have a bottle or two in it. It has 2 doors. Each has a grape leaf pattern intricately carved in iron on them. And below the main cabinet is a narrow drawer. And then carved into the back was a Hebrew phrase, which Mannis later learned was a prayer. Intrigued by this whole affair, Mannis purchased the wine cabinet, the sewing box, and some furniture at the estate sale. The wine cabinet, apparently he bought without even opening it. As he was loading his new possessions into his truck, the estate's granddaughter approached him and said, "I see you've got the Dybbuk box." When asked what she meant, she explained that was what her grandmother called the wine cabinet. It was always in her sewing room and it was always closed. She insisted that the box should never be opened. And when Mannis was like, "So why? What's inside?" she spit 3 times and declared that a Dybbuk was inside. Her grandmother, Havilah, had wanted to be buried with the Dybbuk box, but doing that is actually a violation of Jewish funerary custom, apparently. So they didn't. Mm-hmm. Moved by all of this, Mannis offered to let her keep the box. And then when she refused, he offered to open it with her. But she wanted nothing to do with it and sent him on his way, insisting, "You bought it, you made a deal." Mannis took the box to his store the following day. Leaving his assistant to tend to the storefront, he took the box to his basement workshop, and down there he opened it. The door mechanism also triggers the other door to open, so they both kind of open simultaneously. It also makes the lower drawer pop open as well, so the whole thing kind of unfurls like a big mouth opening or something like that. Both of the doors have receptacles for glasses, 2 for shot glasses and 2 for highballs per door. Inside, Mannis found a very unusual collection of items. U.S. wheat pennies from 1925 and 1928, 2 locks of hair, 1 brown and 1 blonde, both tied with string, a mounted granite slab with the word Shalom carved into it, a dried rosebud, a golden wine goblet, and a cast iron candlestick holder with octopus's legs.
All of that sounds really freaking awesome, and it also sounds like a ritual, like ritual accoutrement.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Very strange things defined in this, especially the candlestick holder. I think the candlestick holder is the thing, and the hair really drives it as like man, that's weird shit to be in there, right?
Yeah.
When he found these things, obviously Mannis was like, "Oh, these should not have been in this box." So he set them aside, thinking he was going to return them to the estate. Mm-hmm. And he left the box in the basement and went to run some errands. Half an hour later, his cell phone rang. His assistant was on the other end, distraught. They said that someone broke into the basement workshop and locked the exits to the store, trapping her inside. She hid on the main floor, and she could hear the intruder below smashing things in the basement. Manus asked if she had seen someone, and she said, "No, I haven't. I must have run in when I wasn't looking." Apparently, the doors just slammed shut, and there was this cacophony that just started in the basement. So Manus told her, "Call the police, and I'm coming back right now," and his cell phone died. He arrived before the police, and he did indeed find the doors locked. But brave man that he was, Manus threw open the basement door and flicked on the light switch. But the lights didn't work. So he's looking around, and he realized that all of the light bulbs, including the overhead fluorescent lights, had been destroyed, almost as if they exploded.
It sounds like a movie, like a horror movie.
Right, it totally does. Straight out of a horror movie. There's glass all over the floor. And he says that the entire place smelled acrid, a scent that he likened to cat urine. He searches the basement, and there's no cat, no intruder to be found.
A cat would definitely do all of this, by the way.
A cat would absolutely do all of that.
Yeah, it's probably just a cat, honestly.
What's more remarkable is that the workshop, that basement workshop, had only one door access from the first floor. So anyone who was down there breaking shit would have had to pass Manus on their way out if they escaped. And anyone who snuck in would have been seen by his assistant.
It was the assistant. Like, I did not get my raise. I'm going to start a whole legend here.
That's your, like, Benoit Blanc.
Yeah.
Glass onion, knives out. Like, it must have been the assistant.
Well, clearly, the assistant was not getting paid what she wanted to be paid.
The whole incident freaked his assistant out so much that she never came back.
Oh. So she had planned to quit this entire time. This was always her modus operandi.
I want you to deliver all of your assumptions as Benoit Blanc.
Yes, going forward, that would be the way.
So a few weeks go by, and Manus decided to refinish the wine cabinet, thinking, "Oh, this would make a good gift for my mother's birthday coming up."
Is he crazy?
That's what he thought. I mean, maybe, well, it could be a good gift. Why is it a bad gift?
No, because it caused a hurricane in the basement.
Well,
he must not like his mother very much.
He doesn't think that, though.
Oh, okay. What does he think happened then?
I don't know. He just kind of chalked it up as oh, that's weird.
There was an intruder that ran out.
I think that's the assumption.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm not judging him. That's just his thing, if he wants to do that to his mother. But, okay.
He completed his refinishing work, cleaned it, re-oiled the cabinet, and finally presented it to her in his shop on October 31st, 2001.
Ooh.
Now, according to his accounts on Dybbukbox.com, she seemed to like it. That's a quote. She seemed to like it. Which sounds like she didn't like it at all.
Yeah. Mom, I need a place for you to, I know you want to have a place to put all your whiskey as you're, walking through town. It's kind of a mobile little whiskey container.
I mean, sort of, yeah.
It's like you can have a party with you wherever you go. You can open it up on the bus. Like, hey, anybody want to join my party?
Mom, I know you're a drunk.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. I think it's a nice gift.
Hey, listen,
do think it's a nice gift.
I would freaking love this gift. I'm just saying, if anybody wants to get me a Dybbuk box, I would be very happy to have one.
Yes, please send us Dybbuk boxes.
Please.
Yes. If any of our listeners want to buy a Dybbuk box off of eBay and send it to us, we will open it on the show.
Yes.
We will even film it. Mm-hmm. We'll put it as a special feature on our Buy Me a Coffee site. Mm-hmm. If you want to do that, reach out. You can DM us on Instagram.
Yeah,
or email us, slangmonsterspodcast@gmail.com, and I'll get you details of how to actually send it to us. I would love to own a Dybbuk box and open a Dybbuk box.
Yes.
Anyway, so he gave it to his mom. His mom seemed to like it. Manus went to make a phone call, but when he returned, he found his mother sitting in a chair, unresponsive and crying. She was rushed to the hospital, where doctors determined she had suffered a stroke. She was completely unable to speak for a while, although Manus remembers her using a pen and paper and spelling out the words "hate gift" to him in the days that followed.
Whoa, it's quite a 180.
Yeah. I don't think she liked it to begin with. And I think she had a stroke and then was like, I just want you to know, I hate your present.
This might be the last time I can tell you this, son. Of all the things I want to tell you in my life, I hate that gift.
I also want to put out there, Ida Manis, that's her name, Ida Manis, is awesome. She is an incredible human being. We're going to talk about her more in episode 3.
Okay.
And I just love her. I think she's fucking incredible.
Oh, so, cool. Anyway, all right.
Yeah. Manis shrugged off his mother's rejection of the gift, and he decided to give it to his sister instead, figuring somebody in the family's got to like this thing, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
But a week later, his sister returned it to him, claiming that the doors kept popping open. Manis then tried to give the cabinet to his brother, but his sister-in-law thought it smelled like cat urine, and she refused it. At this point, it seems like nobody wants your box, dude. Like, stop trying, you know? So I guess he had like completely exhausted the potential family members he could give the thing to. So he just listed it for sale in his shop.
Okay.
It did sell, but it got returned 3 days later. Not even when the store was open. It was returned and left on the front step of the shop with a note that said, "This has a bad darkness."
That poor little wine box. It just wants to make you happy. I think these people are just have this issues with alcohol. They're like, I open it and I just drink things.
Teetotalers.
Yeah. Oh, man.
So Manis, I think he finally got the hint at that point and gave up and brought the wine cabinet home with him. Almost immediately, he started having nightmares. He would see visions of what he calls a hag, a monstrous old woman who physically assaulted him in his dreams. He would awake with bruises. Then he claimed he started seeing things out of the corner of his eye, like something lurking in his field of vision. Okay, so we gotta take a minute here and talk about sleep paralysis, the old hag, and hallucinations, because this is a topic that I've been fascinated with for probably 15 years. To be completely clear, this is unlikely what happened to Kevin Manis, because most of his story is completely made up.
Even from the very beginning.
Even from the very beginning.
Yeah.
But sleep paralysis and the old hag, these are real phenomena that happens to likely millions of people and often gets misconstrued as ghosts, demons, or even aliens. So the concept of sleep demons or the old hag is really a cross-cultural phenomena. Brian Dunning of Skeptoid cites references to nocturnal monsters attacking sleepers in cultures all over the world and notes the word haggard comes from the concept.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you remember our discussion of the boo hag?
I do remember it, but I don't remember exactly what it came from.
Don't let the boo hag ride you.
Okay, yes.
It's something that you would say when you're tired.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, in India, she's a witch. In Slavic cultures, it's an elf that will prey on you when you're asleep. It's also been the sexual attacks of incubi and succubi. And it's been alien abductions as well. A common tenet of alien abductions is that you are frozen on the table. Usually when we're talking about that, we talk about being under sedation because it's like high-tech kind of thing. So people think that they're on this table under sedation, unable to move.
Wow, I actually have never put together that sleep paralysis is abduction, alien abduction.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Holy crap. Because in my head, I'm always thinking, well, okay, everybody who says that they are being abducted by aliens are just lying. Because you can't hallucinate. I mean, you can hallucinate it, I guess, but you can't, like, just mistaken an everyday occurrence as an alien abduction.
Right.
Like, you can't just mistake that until you think about it in paralysis terms.
Yes.
What is this person going through in their daily life? Are they watching a lot of the X-Files? Are they highly influenced by alien abduction stories? Are they really interested in it? Like,
and it's just how do you process it?
How do you process it?
How do you process it? So it's the same phenomena, right? Same phenomena. You are in bed, frozen, or laying down, right? We'll say that. You are laying down, frozen, and something is over top of you looking at you. Now, some people might take that as something is trying to sexually assault me. And that's your incubi and succubi, right? And you see that a lot of times when you're talking about like highly religious or highly chaste, perhaps, types of people, right? You have the different sleep paralysis demons that come from different experiences cross-culturally. You have the elf in Scandinavian mythology, right? That sits on your chest. Yeah. And then if you are perhaps of the persuasion to believe that alien abductions are happening, then that's how you interpret it instead. And I think I've talked about this on the show before, but I've actually experienced sleep paralysis at least twice. I remember 2 times very specifically. The one time here.
Yes.
In this very house. In this house.
In this house.
Yeah, it was really wild. And then, of course, I was the nerd, even in my dream.
Yeah.
Because and it was a woman. It was crazy.
Yeah, talk about it.
Because I knew I was paralyzed in bed. And I remember that I had not been sleeping very well at the time. I was paralyzed in bed. And there was this woman in the room with me, and I knew somehow that she was from the basement. Like she was a spirit from the basement or something like that. She came from below, right? It was just something that I knew. And she walked from when you're laying in our bed, you can see the bedroom door. If you look like past your feet, you can see the bedroom door past the foot of the bed. And she was at the door and she was coming toward me, and she didn't weigh anything, which is a little different than how you usually experience it, because a lot of times there's pressure on your chest. But she could like extend her whole body over the foot of our bed to like lean into me. And she like led with one eye up my body to like look at me. And it was during that process that I came to the realization, oh my God, I'm finally having sleep paralysis. This is so cool. And then I woke up. But during the process, I got really excited. I was like, oh boy, this is sleep paralysis. Oh, this is the hag. This is what it's like. Oh, very cool. And then I woke up and it was all
like,
gone.
Damn it, you asshole. You're supposed to be scared.
Yeah.
So could you not move or anything?
Momentarily, no.
Okay.
Yeah. Between that and seeing the woman was like the tip off that I was like, oh shit, this is actually it. This is sleep paralysis. This is the hag. Here it comes.
That's so cool. I'm jealous of you.
I know. So to understand sleep paralysis, you have to understand what happens when you fall asleep. According to the Sleep Foundation, there are 4 stages to sleep, and we kind of slip in and out of them throughout the course of the night. In stage 1, also called N1, you're just like dozing off. Your brain is slowing down, your body's still kind of unwinding, and in this stage you can very easily be woken up. In most cases, you stay in this stage for just a couple of minutes, and then you slip into the next stage. Stage 2, or N2, your muscles relax and your breathing and heart rate slow. Your eyes stop moving behind your eyelids too. And your brain activity changes and transitions into more of a burst mode. So your brain is like chill, and then it'll have like a short span of hyperactivity, and then it'll chill again. It's much harder to wake up from this state, and it takes longer. About half of your time asleep is spent in this stage 2, N2. Now in stage 3, or you guessed it, N3, everything just gets deeper. Slower breathing and heart rate, more relaxation, slower brain waves, and less activity. This is the restful rejuvenation sleep. And you'll spend more time in this stage in the first half of the night. Then comes REM sleep. So REM, do you know what that stands for?
Rapid eye movement.
Rapid eye movement, yep. Meaning that your eyes are active again. They had stopped up until this point, but now they're active again, even though you're not actually looking at anything. In fact, your eyes and your breathing are the only muscles that are actively moving during REM, or stage 4. The rest of your body is actually paralyzed. Your brain shuts it down to keep you from hurting yourself.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah. And this is where your most vivid dreams happen. Now, why we dream is still a matter of debate among neurologists. It could be our brain's way of consolidating memories and running checks, kind of like a computer performing background tasks. Or it could be a holdover from a time when we needed to be alert at night and when our brains needed to respond to noises of approaching predators. Or it could be our imagination continuing to create while the rest of our thought functions are shut down. And that, keeps us creative and engaged as human beings. No matter what, this deep and dreaming REM sleep is a phase where it should be hard to wake up. But sometimes you do. And that causes all sorts of weird side effects. Remember, I said your brain paralyzes your body to keep it from harming itself. Well, if you wake up during REM sleep, your brain might be really slow in reactivating your body and removing that paralysis. That means that you'll have a few minutes of just lying in bed, conscious of your surroundings, but unable to move. Except for your eyes, right? Because your eyes do move. During this partial awakening, your imagination is still crafting dream states. Since you're not fully awake, but you're partially awake, it can be difficult to determine what is real sensory input and what is leftover dream. Your fumbling brain is trying to push you, wake up, wake up, wake up, recognize the world around you, but it's also juggling input that it's getting from the imaginary dream world. And we call this hypnagogic hallucinations. As your brain strives to reconcile the input it's receiving from all these sources, real and imaginary, sometimes it fucks up, for lack of a better phrase. You might see things that don't exist or hear disembodied sounds and voices, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
You might wake up quickly, but you might not. And that's when sleep paralysis really takes hold. Because if your brain can't reconcile all of this input quickly enough, and if your body doesn't respond and become unparalyzed, your brain goes into panic mode.
And you start to probably have really scary thoughts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. When that happens, your brain, it defaults to rapid programming. So every day, we know our brains are bombarded by input, and they tend to only take in what's necessary and form a picture of the world, right? So that's why you sometimes mistake faces for people you know, or see things far away that aren't what you thought they were when they were up close, something like that, right? It's all our brains deciding what information to keep and what to discard, allowing them to process faster by filtering out unnecessary input. But during sleep paralysis, our brain is doing this, and it's desperately looking for familiar input. It's looking for faces. It's looking for human shapes, that kind of recognizable thing. And, we're still very basal creatures. It's also looking for threats. What is dangerous? What is friendly? And more often than not, it finds these things. Or at least it thinks it does. It thinks it finds things that look like them. Piles of clothes on a chair, vague eye shapes in cracks in the ceiling, bunched up blankets that might look like limbs. Our brain gloms onto these familiar forms and then tells us, oh, that looks like a face, so there's a person there. You should wake up and deal with them.
Yeah, because at this point, correct me if I'm wrong, but you don't really have the executive functioning.
Right.
You just have the instinctual lizard brain, whatever we call it these days, functioning.
Yeah, because you're running in this neurological panic mode.
Right, which is fight, flight, freeze. And
Fawn.
there's another one, fawn, right.
Yeah. Yeah, so you're paralyzed. So your brain is trying to reconcile why you're paralyzed. Because your brain's not smart enough to know that it has you paralyzed. It doesn't talk to itself that way.
Right.
So it is now, I'm awake, I can't move, I'm getting this weird input that is sort of fantastical images. I'm trying to reconcile that with the real world that I know and I understand. And it drives your brain to this panic mode. And then all of a sudden, as soon as it hits the panic mode, it's find what the threat is, find what the familiar shapes are right now. We need this.
And doesn't it seem like it feeds on itself and gets worse and worse and worse, the more you panic?
Absolutely, yeah.
For example, you, it was interesting because you recognized what was happening in the moment. Yeah. And so because you, I don't know how this is, but because you did, your executive function was able to kind of kick on and you could be this isn't real?
It's
I don't
hard-
know. You didn't go into that place.
Yeah,
though.
it's hard for me to say. I definitely remember being in the moment and being like, oh, cool, this is the hag.
Yeah.
I'm having sleep paralysis. Isn't that cool? Because I knew what it was. I don't know why I didn't jump to panic. I don't know if it's just because I've been so obsessed with the old hag phenomena for so long.
Mm-hmm.
If I had done that before, maybe. I remember there was a time when I was a kid that I thought I saw a woman hanging at the foot of my bed.
Mm-hmm.
I saw the like twisted neck of a woman hanging. It was my grandparents' house, and I saw that at the foot of the bed, and that scared me a lot.
And that was
and
like
that
probably
panic.
sleep
I
paralysis.
think it was. I mean, it was so long ago, and I'm
Yeah.
kind of like putting my current knowledge back on that now. But I believe I had sleep paralysis because I don't remember being paralyzed, but all the rest of it fits perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I did.
Okay. Anyway,
But,
I
yeah, it's
derailed
very-
us, but
No, it's fine.
It's
Yeah.
interesting to me, how you came to that in the moment.
Yeah, I think I just knew what it was, and so yeah, that executive function kind of overrode or is it the executive function that my more stable brain overrode the panic mode.
Yeah, I think that's what it's technically called, like your
Okay, yeah.
higher level thinking versus
Yeah.
your baser thinking,
Sure.
which we need both very badly.
Absolutely.
And
yeah.
so, yeah, I think maybe, yeah.
We're guaranteed to have several listeners who suffer from sleep paralysis just because of the numbers. Almost everybody experiences it at least once in their lives.
I feel very left out.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe this will help you if it happens to you to know what's going on and be able to say, oh, whoa, I'm just having sleep paralysis. None of this is real.
Mm-hmm.
I can just kind of ride this as an interesting experience in my life instead. And I might help deal with what's going on.
I'll probably knock you right out of it, too.
Probably.
Because it
yeah.
knocked you right out of it.
Well, yeah, maybe because I was able to help my brain contextualize what was real and what wasn't. Where I was like, oh, bed, no, I'm there. Woman, not real,
Yeah, and then you woke up,
Yeah.
basically. Yeah.
Maybe.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay.
So the result of all of this complicated phenomena that happens is the old hag that appears and attacks, like the woman that I saw. It's not real, right? It's a result of our brain running this default programming under duress. We pick out these familiar shapes because they make sense, and that's why we see these creatures. And another part of this that's so fascinating is that I know that as humans, we are driven to recognize eyes. And so that's something we're always going to be looking for. And a lot of times they talk about this in terms of alien abductions. And we'll talk about this later on when we talk like Whitley Strieber and some of the communion type contact cases. But one of the reasons that you talk about these aliens with these big almond eyes, these like oblong eyes, is because when you're in that sort of sleep paralysis panic state, that's one of the things that your brain automatically latches onto. What type of eyes am I looking at? Am I looking at human eyes? Am I looking at predator eyes? And so you're going to try to pick out those particular kinds of eyes. And that's a theory that people have postulated, that the aliens have these very big eyes is because that's your brain being like, eyes, gotta find the eyes.
I see.
Okay, so Kevin Mannis, he's experiencing this type of sleep paralysis, at least according to him. And he told his family about it. And his sister was very quick to point out that she had episodes too, but only when the wine cabinet was in her home. Mannis hit a breaking point here. He considered destroying the cabinet, but in his own words, quote, I really don't have any understanding of what I may or may not be dealing with. I am afraid, and I do mean afraid, that if I destroy the cabinet, whatever it is that seems to have come with the cabinet may just stay here with me. This guy, he's at his wit's end. And so he turned to the last bastion of humanity's hope, eBay. He listed the cabinet, wrote a long account of his problems with it, and mentioned other coincidental bad luck, like the lease to his store being terminated, smoke alarms going off, and all of his fish dying at once in his aquarium. The Dybbuk box almost immediately sold. And it's with the next owner and the continual weirdness and self-created world building that we will pick up next time.
Yay! Very cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, am I allowed to say that or ask if any of this is real?
You're allowed to ask that.
Are you going to tell me?
Sure. Yeah, I'll tell you. So his story is a complete fabrication.
Mm-hmm.
But
sleep paralysis, the basement cat, all like the break-in.
I believe so.
Okay.
Okay, so Manus is he's an interesting dude, right? Mm-hmm. Because what happened to his mother was real.
Okay. She
had a stroke, and he created a story off of that.
Okay.
But I will say that he did so knowingly. Mm-hmm. He this is not something that he misinterpreted her stroke and was, wrong about things. Mm-hmm. So I can't really say, did he not have sleep paralysis? No. He may very well have been so stressed out by his mother's health condition after her stroke that he started experiencing sleep paralysis. Mm-hmm. But what I can say definitively is that his sleep paralysis was not caused by a demon inside the wine cabinet.
Right.
There is no demon inside the wine cabinet. The Dybbuk box is not real. Sorry, Zak Bagans.
Zak Bagans.
And we'll talk about why.
Yeah.
I think what's cool is saying in this story and in most of these stories, this is not real definitively. But let's talk about why.
Yeah, let's talk about why.
And that's what I'll kind of hold from you, and we can kind of unveil bit by bit as the story progresses.
Cool. Well, I really like the creativity of this Manus guy.
It's great,
I appreciate his creativity. It's really cool.
It's really cool because it's a story that you have not encountered anywhere before.
Yes.
The Dybbuk is real in the sense of like it's real Kabbalah mythology, right? So that's a real demon from history. But Dybbuks have never popped up in popular ghost stories. I mean, you talked about the gap that we have between the, 1700s? 1700s
to 2003?
And eBay, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Dybbuks are just quiet. Like every now and then there will be like a possession that pops up because somebody's wife doesn't want to have sex with them. But for the most part, like they're not... There's no stories wrapped around them where you see a lot of Christian demon possessions and these sorts of things, and you have your exorcists and you have like all of that shit and haunted houses and stuff. You don't have that coming out of Dybbuk mythology. Yeah, so it's out of kind of nowhere, which is really cool, and I think is one of the reasons why the story has such sticking power, because it's not just another ghost story.
Right.
Certainly one of the reasons why I was fascinated by it, because it's not just, here's another fucking person who got possessed or another haunted object. Like, this is actually something completely different.
And it's based on a really neat branch of Judaism.
Totally,
which you don't really get to talk about a whole lot, especially not in the context of ghosts and possessions and demons and stuff. So it's a neat little history lesson as well.
Super, super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, next time we will continue to talk about the Dybbuk box. And we'll go into a little bit more of the history of the box itself. At least the claimed history of it.
And we'll probably talk about ghost research and ghost measurements and things like that as well.
Oh, yeah. Yes, we will. Yeah. Yeah, we're gonna talk quite a bit about ghost hunting technology in the coming episodes.
Yeah. Nice.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep.
Nice.
Thank you so much for listening, everybody.
Thanks for listening. If you're lucky enough to have a mobile liquor cabinet in your life, give it a little hug. Tell it you love it. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Maybe have a bit of a glass.
You should do
something.
Pour a little out for the Dybbuk that lives inside your liquor cabinet.
Yeah. If you don't, it will get you.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it just wanted some wine, dude.
Maybe
that's all it was. It's stuck in a liquor cabinet, but there's nothing to drink. All it's got are these, like, freaking locks of hair and a candle. Like, dude, it's probably just like, yo, can I get some Manischewitz?
Yeah, no wonder this happened. No wonder.
Yeah.
Man. All we drank was Manischewitz when we were kids. Kids, but...
not like children.
Not children, but
Yeah,
Oh, man.
in the timeline of my alcohol consumption, when I was that was very much like a I don't condone underage drinking. However, that was definitely something that I drank before I was of legal age to drink.
Yeah, we just had Manischewitz in our apartment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, peach Manischewitz.
And then like a little bit after we became of legal age as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, we kind of have grown away from Manischewitz to different things.
Not
but,
so much anymore.
Yeah, but man,
it was a time.
That was a time. Yep. All right, well, you know what? Enjoy your Dybbuk boxes if you got them.
You do it. Yeah. Be safe out there.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Slaying Monsters, the Paranormal History Podcast. If you like the podcast, there's a couple ways to show your support. You can tell your friends, you can leave us a rating and review on your podcast platform, or you can head over to slayingmonsterspodcast.com and click on the Support Us button to leave a donation. For questions, suggestions, and other feedback, reach out to us, slayingmonsterspodcast@gmail.com, and stay up to date by following us on Instagram @slayingmonsterspodcast. Your support helps us grow, and we are truly grateful to have our listeners and community.